Hello, everyone watching now or watching later, and welcome to a Studio77 live games developer interview. So for those that might already know, my name is Nigel, and this is Tazziii. We are the hosts. So mayamada co-founder in this box, over in that box, GamePad host. We also have a podcast, but we're going to talk about all that in a second. So, so for those that might already know, this is our GamePad platform where we bring you creative conversations with professionals in the games industry as we look to demystify the profession and raise awareness of career paths for the next generation of young and aspiring creators, and pretty much anyone interested in how games come together. So we're going to introduce our guests at the moment and then delve into their journey. Tazziii, you want to let us know a bit more about the GamePad brand and platform?
Yes. So we sort of launched the online experience in 2020, and this year we launched our Studio77.
A lot of numbers. We thought a lot of numbers out there.
A lot of numbers. I'm very sort of wrapping my head around them. The Studio77 membership, which gives exclusive access to GamePad events such as this one and content across the mayamada universe. So we have things like this interview, which will be available to Studio77 members way after it disappears here on the Twitch VOD. And GamePad is just our community where we bring gaming and promote inclusivity and diversity in the games industry. And we do work with young people, bringing them work experience opportunities as they make their way into a career in video games. And today we have with us indie dev from Lightbulb Crew Studios, and they are the CEO and game director, Anders Larsson. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
We're very glad to have you here.
It's my pleasure. I love talking, and I love talking about video games. So it's really not a bother. And I also really passionate about getting people into the video game industry, because I find it. First of all, it's a lack of people, and it's also a great opportunity, I think, for those that have this as a real interest.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
You're in the right place.
Definitely.
You're in the right place.
Yeah. To start off with, we want to know a bit more about your video game journey, how you got into the industry. And we find that when we talk to people across the games industry, there's always a completely different story. I absolutely love hearing about how people get in. So how did you make your transition, and what was the catalyst?
Well, but like video games to me has always been about sharing experiences with others, actually. So yeah, you remember when I started playing video games when I was quite young. I'm so old now that I actually started playing video games now on the ZX Spectrum together with my cousin. We even started programming a little bit in BASIC back in that time. And so to me, video game, like playing games, has always been something you do together with people, and that kind of stuck with me throughout as I was growing up. Eventually, when I got to go do my engineering degree, I actually played the MUDs, as they were called back in the day. For those that don't know, they were text-based multi-user role-playing games, if you want. And I remember specifically, and why did I play that? Because you would play it together with other people online, and and share that kind of experience. And so I actually celebrated once after having, I think it was an algebra test, which algebra is important, but it's not easy. And I celebrated afterwards by playing for 24 hours straight, while getting up from the computer twice to go to the bathroom.
And so, what game was that?
That was a multi-user dungeon. That was low. I think it was a smallish one. There was a few thousand people that were playing it. I can't even remember the name of it, but there was a lot of people from my university that was playing it. So, and then I also was playing Age of Empires with friends a little bit later. We would go to this LAN place and play it together. So, like, video games has always been something that's very much something you do together with people. And then, kind of as I was finishing up at university, this was in the 90s. 97, 98 or something like that. At that time, I had a very good friend of mine that we were kind of dreaming about. We should start to do something in video games, start a game company together. It's just like I had actually literally no idea how to have anything worked, and it was just felt it was so distant in a sense. Like I did not know what to do. We didn't really know where to start. And so instead, we kind of, each one of us, you, one, my friend, and I, we kind of started on our careers afterwards. I started as an IT software developer first in a few consulting companies, and then I realized how bad they were, and I started my own. And I was running that consulting company for 4 years, and then once we got through the terrible years around the year 2000 and the dot-com crash that happened at that time, when we got through it, then I said, okay, next time for the next chapter. I went to the US, got an MBA, and worked in business for a while, and eventually ended up back in Europe. But then I went to Paris to start my second company, and that was a company in the medical laboratories, but literally like doing blood tests on people. And again, that had really nothing to do either really with computers or with video games. But once I was out with that, and so I sold my part of that in 2013. That's when I was thinking, now what do I do this time? And here it was actually my wife that said, "Oh, the next company, why don't you do something that you're really passionate about?" And so in the meantime, I had actually discovered League of Legends as a video game. And my video game playing had a little bit of a hiatus as I started my career, actually. And then I had rediscovered video games and games playing, in wherever 2010 or something like that. And so, and I thought, yeah, why not? I should do something that I'm really passionate about. And I contacted my old friend from university, and then in 2013 we started what ended up. We started with the Lightbulb Crew. And now, as you say, everyone's path is different. So in my case, I had quite a few years of experience. I also had been lucky and succeeded with my first startup. So I had like a financial platform to be able to start a company with. But I can say, doing it the way I did it is maybe not the best way to start your own company, because I started for example, when I started this lab company, just before that I had actually worked in the lab industry, learned what was going on, and got my own experience, and then I started my own lab company. When I started my IT consulting company, I had first worked as an IT consultant, realized what didn't work, and then started my own. Video games, I started cold. So I went right into it, and that ended up being very, very expensive, because I literally had to learn everything about how it works. Because video games, yeah, sure, there's a large amount of programming and software development and so on that's going on, but it's much more. But it's very different at the same time compared to regular software development. The fact that you have a player that's gonna screw up what you're doing, the fact you have to deal with many different platforms, and the fact that you have to it's not enough to do something that is working right. It has to also be artistically right. It has to
feel right.
And so as we were starting that Lightbulb Crew up, I made so many mistakes. I made mistakes in every single area in video games development, marketing, anything, literally every area you could. And so I think in retrospect, it would have been better if I had started in actually decided I wanted to go into video games, found a company that would have me do anything basically, and then started my company afterwards. Because I think there is the risk of success, or the chance of success, when you started something new, is always kind of low. In video games, it's almost amplified because it is such a complex and competitive space if you want to start something yourself. There's so many games that are coming out, and many of them are not good, but some of it, like hundreds of games, are fantastic games that come out every year. And so, but anyways, what the great thing about doing that first game that we did as we started, that was a game called Games of Glory. I'm super proud of so many things we did in that game. It came out in 2017 on PC and PlayStation. It was a cross-play, competitive, cross-platform competitive shooter like MOBA. So it was twin stick controls and stuff like that. And the cool thing about that was that it actually made the platforms equal. So PlayStation players could actually win against PC players, etc. And so we had competitions, and it was so much fun. But in the end, the quality was just not good enough for it to be able to win in that, like where you had giants like League of Legends, or we were not the only MOBA style game at that time that failed. There were so many games that came out and then just didn't do anything. But what we did was that we learned a bunch of things as we were doing that development, which we then could kind of leverage into making our next game, which was called then Othercide. And so that was like, I don't know, as I said, it's easy for me to talk. So if there, but the transition that I did was something that worked for somebody with my experience. What we have also seen is, and I've obviously worked with lots of people that come into the industry in different ways. For example, when part of every time we ended up working with people that actually are part of the communities, and they. So, for example, we had people that started out as fans of Games of Glory that then ended up coming over to work for us, either with it's like a community management role or even as developer, etc. So, like, there are all of these, and that's really exciting for me to see how people, love our products and love what we're doing, and that gives us that gives actually this strong connection to people that are applying for it. And I think it's something that's something that actually, strangely enough, works. And for me, that's a real pleasure, because I've had people that I have then helped as well find their way from being a fan of. Originally, for example, there was a guy who was a fan of Games of Glory. He worked with us a little bit as a community manager, as an unpaid. Then I gave him good recommendations so he could get in to become a community manager paid at some other company, etc. So seeing people coming in through their passions and then develop their careers, it's really cool.
Nice.
And so you sort of spoke a bit about what creating your first game, what you learned from that. But are there any skills or experience that you brought over from your previous careers that helped you in video game development?
Sure. But there's so much. So video game, the things that's cool about video games is that everything is involved. So if you're a good project manager, you can become if you're good or not, but it's the same skills. Like, managing a project is similar in many ways to in video games. That is managing a project outside. Programming, if you're interested in programming, that is super important skills in video games. But with all of these things, there is also these things, the aspects of it that are very, very specific for video games. So, for example, if you take programming as an example, general programming gives you a good understanding of algorithms and way of solving problems, etc., etc. But then, in order to be able to to be productive in a video game setting, you also need to learn how to deal with all the tools and work with the big engines and so on. So if you're a programmer that are interested in video games, it is really, really, I think it's really important to kind of download some of the big engines like Unity or something like that, and work on that. And the same goes a little bit for, like, you have these similar kind of things for a project manager, for example. Project managers are super important in video games because video games are very complex projects. But they have their own jargon. They have their own then there is a lot of stuff to get through. But if you have the mentality to be a good project manager, then you can absolutely do a fantastic job in video games. And then you have a lot of people that have less qualified skills, often come in through being doing quality assurance and testing and so on. And that is actually a quite good way to get into video games as well.
I've heard a lot of people get into that way. Like,
sorry?
I've heard a lot of people I've spoken to have gotten like through testing and then worked their way up.
Yeah. But I think it's also like, that is also something, some people believe that testing is actually its own profession and has a lot, like it has real value, and good testers are a real asset. But certain aspects of it are just easier, is less specific and easier to understand and easier to pick up, right? So I think in any ways it's easy. It is less then it necessitates less very specific knowledge that you in many of the other things that aspects you might want to have. But from my personal perspective, like I had a lot of experience with management, financials, and accounting, and all of that kind of stuff that's important to running a company. I also a lot of experience with video games and analytical thinking, and so I had done, if you do market studies and analyzing and thinking about the different problems, that helps a lot. And on top of that, I have some aspect of creativity as well. Like I like creating worlds in some sense, right? I like creating settings, and I like also creating and thinking about why people like things. Like, for example, if I take myself as a very good example. Right now, nowadays, I almost only play League of Legends. Why exactly do I do that? It sounds, on its face, it sounds very, very weird. I'm a 48-year-old man. I'm actually quite bad at the game. And for somebody who has invested thousands of hours in playing this, and then understanding why I like that, why do I do that? That actually was really interesting to think about. Like, why would people like horror games? Horror, it's awful. Like, why do people like that stuff? It's the same with horror movies. Why would we like horror movies? What are the drivers? Why people, why would you do that to yourself?
It's a good question.
And so I find it, but if you're
question,
and in video games, that's one of the things that you have to understand, is you have to figure out who is this game for, and what is it that they're going to get out of it. And then in many cases, and this is something that we learned, and we really tried to apply in Othercide, for example. So in Othercide, because we were making a game that was about tactics, and like it's turn-based, you have to make plans, and we know immediately when you have that type of game, there is a certain type of people that will play that. Not everyone will. A lot of people just don't like that. And so if you then make the game adds aspects to the game that these people that like this genre don't like, then you basically killed your market. So for example, one of those things, we wanted to make a game that was tactical. That is like you're playing it like a chess game, right? And you have like the great games in this genre was games like XCOM. And so XCOM is a fantastic video game. It's one of the games that outside of League of Legends that I actually would play myself. and it's about like you're making these plans and so on. And it's a great game, but it would be a horrible action movie. Because how it works, like in XCOM, you're controlling each character one by one, and you put them, and you always have to make sure that they hide behind the cover so that they can't get shot easy, and so then you kind of advance from cover to cover, etc. And that would be an awfully boring action movie. And so what we wanted to do something that was much more dynamic and something that would why. So we had to figure out why was this boring, and how can we create mechanics that these people that like these types of games would like to use, and still make it feel more dynamic, feel like you're actually reacting to what people are doing. So we actually spent a lot of time watching action movies, trying, this is a cool move. And why is it a cool move? Some of it is the staging, how cool it looks and everything. But then we realized it's actually about, it's not about one person doing the move. It's a reaction to that move. It's how people interact. And so rather than, and that was kind of the first piece of the puzzle, the other side, is that rather than like we're going to move characters one by one, they will actually have to be able to somehow react to what others are doing in the game. So we came up with these new types of mechanics that are very rare in these games, where you like prepare an action. So if something happens, then you'll react to that. For example, if one of your friends gets attacked, you will throw yourself in front of that, take the bullet for him or her. You think about like in the action movie, how the sidekick is distracting the big baddie just as he's about to kill the hero, right? Like you have those kind of interactions all the time in movies. It's not only about Jackie Chan doing that fantastic kick, it's about how all of these people interact. And so that was what the game ended up being about. But if we were in that to put in like a quick time event, as it's called, like you have to react in the right timing and so on, we would have completely destroyed it, because the people that are playing these types of tactical games, they want to take their time. They're like chess players. Even though the situation is dynamic, they need to have time to think. And it's for them, like the reward is like the plan coming to fruition.
So the payoff for that.
And if you then screw that up with putting in like quick time events, you have to react on time and you have to do like the 4 moves in the right timing, that would have completely destroyed the game for them. So then we knew this. So we knew the game has to be for these people, because if you lose them, then you lose the base of of the people that like this type of game. But then we also wanted to make the game more interesting for others as well. And so we built. We had basically 2 ideas, 2 typical players of the game. One was my friend that from university that we had started the company together. He is an engineer. He likes these types of games. He wants to take his time, like if he liked the game, then that group of people will like the game. And then we had our art director. He likes numbers that go up. He likes being rewarded for doing things. He likes games like Final Fantasy, where you can level up 100 times and you can find loot and you get powerful and so on and so forth. And so if we made the game so that he would like it, then we would also open up the game for a hopefully a larger audience. And so that was how we were thinking. So these were 2 types of people that we were making the game for. We had to make it work for my co-founder, because if we don't, then the basic market of the game just disappears. But then we also wanted to make it up for these other people that are more driven by other types of experiences and also aesthetic experiences. And so we wanted to make the game then also appeal in this context to these other type of players. And so this is where I think this is something that is really, really interesting to try to figure out, like, what do people like about this genre and this genre, and why would they play this game? And if they like this stuff, is that going to make them enjoy some other feature more or less? Because in the end,
it's why you have to be like really identify who you're making the game for, because it's not like every game isn't for everyone kind of thing. So
absolutely not. And Othercide is really not for everyone. We when you're an independent studio, you don't have the marketing budget, so not everyone that plays games will see it. Like if now I think DICE and EA, they were like, I think it's Battlefield, the new Battlefield that the release trailer is out now, right? They have enough marketing money that every single player of that game that could potentially buy that game, they're gonna know that it's gonna come out. They probably know approximately when it comes out.
Even I saw it, and I don't play Battlefield. Like,
almost every PC player in the Western world at least will know about that before the day is over. If Lightbulb Crew releases something, nobody's gonna know about it. And it's part of it is obviously because it's DICE and it's a brand and all of that kind of stuff. Part of it is just money. Like that trailer costs probably much more to make than our game. And then on top of that, to market it, just to play that trailer, they're spending enormous amount of money to make sure that it gets out everywhere. And so instead, when you're an independent developer, you have to make the game stand out by itself. So by choosing like an art direction that was very specific and feels unique and fresh, that makes that more easy. But it also, because it also stands out and it's unique, that will mean that some people are just not going to like it. It's black and white and red. Okay, if you like blue or whatever, like for sure when you take a stand for something or about something, take a position, you are going to make other people not like it. And the same goes with the game mechanics. Like actually, Othercide is quite hardcore in some sense, in the sense that like if you will fail a lot. Most people fail a lot when they're playing the game, and it takes a certain type of mentality to be able to deal with that, and it's a certain types of mechanics. So all of this means that the game is not for everyone, and that's fine. But the important thing is that we knew who it was for.
Just on the art style a bit, I just want to touch on that a bit more. What sort of drove that decision to go for that black and white gothic noir style?
There's actually a very long story about this. I'm going to try to make it slightly shorter. So when we started off making the game, initially it was something that was, as I said, like the basic thing. We wanted to make a dynamic, tactical, turn-based game. We wanted to have a game where the characters kind of changed themselves over time, and it wasn't just like so they would take on their own characteristics and all that's the part of the game. But originally it was actually set to be like superhuman being, like supernatural beings in Paris. That was basically, and we even got so far. We had worked on a pitch. We all pitched it to a publisher. They were actually we were quite close to signing with them, and then in the end, it fell through somehow. And so we had this idea. It's going to be in Paris. We started working on, and we wanted to do it on our own then. And then during the pre-production, we realized that this is going to cost way too much money than we can ever afford. Making a kind of a realistic, like looking Paris, that's a fortune. And so together with my art director, who is a fantastic guy, to him but what I had asked him to do is I wanted him to make every image of the game be uniquely identifiable, so that if you show one image of it, you should, no matter where it is, you should immediately see that it's Othercide. And
was it always called Othercide?
They started out. Sorry?
Was it always called Othercide, even in that original?
No. Othercide, I wish, came out pretty, like during pre-production, during kind of the first 9 months of the development. But in the whole period before, it was actually called something completely. It was called Paris in Flames for a very long time.
Oh, right, okay.
But anyway, so Alex started working, and then eventually he came and sat me down and said, Anders, if we want to do something that's really stands out, this is the direction I think we should go in. And it's kind of are you willing to make that decision? And because it is black and white and red, and it means that again you're taking a strong stand. And I was ended up being fine with that, because he made that come true. And then the way, instead of then making this realistic or realistic-ish Paris, what we started thinking, okay, literally, what would cost less? black doesn't cost much. So what if, this is Alex saying, what if we're just like in a void? Void is cheap.
I like that.
Void is literally like, you can have like water with ripples on and, you know, like in some good ambience. That doesn't cost much. And so then we kind of, and gradually, and basically going through as the development was going on, we had all of these like extensive feature set of the game that then got gradually more and more and more reduced because of just we couldn't afford it. Like we didn't have the money, we didn't have the time in order to do that. And then towards the end, so we started working on it for real after other Games of Glory was released in the summer 2017, and then in end of 2018. We realized that we wanted to make the game a little bit bigger than we had the budget to do, and so we started looking for real to find like a publishing partner. And then it took some time, but then 2019 eventually we signed with Focus on Interactive, and then we worked together with them and slightly bigger budget to get the game out eventually. And the stuff that we added because of their support was things like cinematics and so on that we otherwise wouldn't have. We would have been really hard pressed to do. But so that was the ask was like, can we make the game immediately identifiable on each frame? This was what Alex proposed to get with that black and white, and then on top of that you have the red scarves, and so almost any image you ever see about the game, even if it's in the menus or whatever, you'll see all of those components. And anyways. So that made it unique. And I think now we had our level of budget, which was more than like a team of 3 or 4 people would have, right? But if you're even if you're a team of 3 or 4, you need to go for that same thing. How can I make every image from my game uniquely identifiable as this is this game, and on top of that, it should ideally be obviously in balance with what the gameplay is going to be.
Can I just say that I love that idea of you having to make everything black and white for cost, just because that is like the reason our manga is black and white. Because when we started, we had this idea, we had no idea what we were doing, but we had this idea we were going to do animation. And I remember having a conversation. I found some studio or something in US, and I found found a number, had a conversation, found out how much it cost for 30 seconds of animation. I was like, that's not even in the realm of what I've got. So we're like, okay, we're going to do manga. And then we found an illustrator, and it was like, okay, this is the price for color, and this is the price for black and white. Okay, we'll do black and white. It's just what can we afford?
It's similar. Actually, in video games, the color is not that much more expensive, but let's say it was for that.
Yeah.
We actually had a very long-standing joke, like throughout the whole process for 3 years. Like Alex would, an art director, would hate us for like joking about the blue all the time. Shouldn't we add some blue here? That was probably funny the first 50 times. I'm not sure, but we kept going.
One of the comments in chat we've got from Q2Me, it's got a very dark side dungeon vibes. Very good.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's very cool because video games take a long time to develop. It's a lot of work. It's like you're making honestly, sometimes it feels like exaggeration to say it, but it is a living artwork. And in some cases, you have more artistic aspirations than others. But it's an artwork that needs to not break down when people try to do what they want with it. And that is what makes it so hard. And so what's very cool was we actually had the development was not easy, and I think it's rarely is easy for video games. But then the last 6 months from before release, you go from a game that was working and had lots of these cool features and so on, that to actually come together and look really good and and so on. And then after that, you worked for it for 3 years, right? From summer 2017 until summer 2020 when it was released. And you're kind of like, you don't even know what to think about the game anymore. Is it any good? Who the hell knows? So we were there like on release night. It was coming out in July, and release night, and then somebody said, "We got a 9 from IGN. Are they joking? Are they trolling us? Is somebody trolling us?"
Wow.
So good, so immensely good. So and I also and it's at that stage, it's just unreal. A lot of people go through their whole video game career without ever having a nicely rated games, and here we had. So that was fun. Personally, what I find so incredibly rewarding with making video games is that you're participating something that makes people feel good. Or like I talk about this. I talk about, like, you can see in people when they kind of get into something and they get these like shining eyes of like intense interest. And we had that. That is so rewarding when you see people doing that around something that you had a share in making. And it's like actually what I felt when I started out as a software developer as well, just basic things of being able to make something for others to use. Even at the time, as I said before the call, I started out making web pages for the Swedish Armed Forces, but it was something that thousands of people could see and use, and I made it because normally I'm like, I have the thumb in the middle of my hand, as we'd say in Sweden, as I'm not particularly able with handicrafts or whatever, but you can make something and other people enjoy it, and it's such a fantastic reward.
Yeah.
So what does your role within the team look like? Like, what is your sort of like day to day?
Well, it varies a little bit. So if we take through so I was as a creative director, different studios have different names. Let's call my game director instead. So game director is basically the guy who makes the main decisions about the game. For example, my art director proposed the art style, and I worked with him to make sure that it felt right. And I actually had something to say in a little bit of everything, but then it comes down to what my main interest is around game mechanics and as I said, like game mechanics and the overall experience of the game. So on the day-to-day, we would work on together with the game designers to kind of define game mechanics. Then I would spend my time together with all of the people on the team, to define, what are you actually going to do, participate in the world building. So me and the art director, we were working together, defining the world. We had the first initial setting that was gradually evolving. Then we worked with some talented writers as well to kind of help develop that. And what was important to us was to kind of bring everything together. So we don't have mechanics to have mechanics. We have mechanics that fit logically into the world. Like, for example, you're dying over and over and over in the game. Like, if you, in certain games, you'll find that there's just not an explanation, that's just because it's a game. But we wanted it to feel right in some sense. So it has to be explained in the game how, this die in the tribe, why does it make logical sense? But then you want to fit, the whole universe and the lore and the stories around the game in it as well. And for example, we worked around the music, and so the music in Othercide, and we're incredibly proud with the music because not because we made it, but because we found artists that were super talented and willing to work together with us and create something that is really makes the game stand out. So I can really, I still get my hair standing up when I come to the first boss battle in the game. It's so well done, the music part of it. I had very little part of making that, but it's just such talented musicians, the sound designer. It's so cool to see.
So talking of like roles that you sort of had to pull in, is there any roles in the team that you had initially sort of overlooked or became more aware of during the development?
like there are so many specializations in video games. That's part of what makes it can also make it harder to get in. Is that, for example, it's not particularly interesting to have like a generalized video game education, for example, because it doesn't really tell you much. It tells you a little bit about the jargon. But what you should get, it's like what is really, really valuable is like the specialist positions, like user interface designer, for example, or a like 2D artists or 3D modelers and all that kind of stuff. Like a generalist thing is not really interesting because what in the end we will end up doing is so specific. But the other thing is like how important good mentality is. And so like if you have somebody that wants to learn and really wants to dig into things, that's so important. But in terms of, it's like the thing is, we knew all about the roles because we had all. This was our second game, right? So we knew about the roles going into it, but it's just they're hard to find great people, and we were lucky in the end to find, fantastic artists. And our project managers, for example, the best project managers in the that worked with us, he really had no experience in video games before, or very, very limited. He knew what it was about. He started doing something else for the company, and then he took a step in and became the lead producer, as a project manager is called. And he did a fantastic job. And it reinforced something that I have always believed, and that is that young people can do, and if you give them responsibility, they can grow an enormous amount. Whenever I doubt about that, I think back to when I was 25 and I started my first company. And so, yeah, of course, obviously, young people can do. Just because I'm 48, you don't have to be 48 now. To be good. The young people can have such an enormous impact with the right mindset.
Yeah,
so.
I agree with that, and I think like part of the thing that we're trying to do with GamePad is get the mindset, because it's like you say, it's the speciality, like the specific skill that you want to learn and you need, but then the right mindset. Although it's interesting to hear you said it's hard to find people. Is that because most people do like a general games thing, or? Because I know there are a lot of games courses.
No, it's not. So we get people applying to join us every day. Literally, we get young people looking to join us. So there always has to be the thing that is complicated is to find the right person at the right time for the right role. And so and there are certain areas in the games industry right now that has been super little people, a few people in there. Again, like I talked about user interface design, for example. For some reason, good, artists don't seem to gravitate towards that, and there's just not that many people that are out there. And so, if I wanted to get into video games and I had an artistic feeling, which I don't, if I had that feeling, then because a UI designer is a fantastic, fantastic career opportunity, I think. But then you have in the same, you have other aspects as well. Technical artists, for example, super hard to find.
I've heard people say that before. Why is that?
I think it's because
specifically
they're
technical
actually
artists.
Mentally different. Like literally, if you take an engineer, which is or an engineering type, you can have, but you have a certain type of formal training, a structured way of thinking, etc. And then you have artists on the other side that, even getting them to try to follow processes and filling out things on time, and the poor project managers have a much harder work because the mentality is different. It's not, you're not organized in the same way. And I think it seems unfortunately rare that these two aspects meet. But if you are an artist and you're a little bit interested in the technology, I think diving deeper into that and understanding what you can do in the engines. It doesn't even have to be very deep technical things, but that would really gives you it's something that is sorely needed in the industry. People with that has that artistic feeling as well, and being able to kind of dig into and make shaders or make just making good materials that look good but also work from a technical standpoint. So so there are lots of like these very specific roles that are hard to find.
That's so interesting, because I find like a lot of people sort of think I am this one or this one, and we're kind of like, I guess, programmed in a way to think of ourselves in like one little box, and that certain things can't exist together, which is just wrong. Because I find so often hearing that people like, you need this like really creative skill, but with this like more structured technical skill. But like a lot of creatives have sort of been told, no, you're either creative or you're not creative. Like you can't exist in both worlds.
Yeah. One thing that is a pretty kind of related in a sense is the fact that it's like as pure artists, like 2D artists, painters, concept artists, etc. Like the level of competition between people that are out there in the market is just incredibly hard. And so in the same sense, like going into video games for most people, you're doing it because you actually care about it, because everybody else in the industry does it. It's not like banks where you go in it for the money. You go into video games because you love video games. But artists, and especially 2D artists, concept artists and so on, they also have to really love painting. And so what I see, but this is actually true for all artists, often we see our artists, they work at work, but then because they want to get better, they will be drawing at home, or they'll doing their own side projects in the evenings. And as from the artistic way in the industry is actually, I would say now is quite difficult, like the pure because there are so many people that want to do it, and only those that are really, really, truly passionate about perfecting their art. Really, it's hard if you don't have that passion. It's really hard to get into the industry, because the level of people that is out there is quite high.
I was just gonna say, Q2 me asked, like Unity asset creators. So just wondering if that's what you meant by.
So Unity is one of those big video game engines, right? And so they can be a lot of people can be making Unity assets on their spare time, or they're working on their projects, or we had people that were participating in these online competitions, for example. Riot has competitions around making the best artworks around their games. There is competitions on ArtStation and so on. And so really, like, for artists that want to get into this, you should participate in those things. You should really push to work on your art. And the other thing is, you really need to have a portfolio that reflects how good you are, and not reflects like old artwork from 3 years ago. You were not that good, because we get the CV, and the only thing for artists, and this is different from like programmers and so on. With artists, the only thing that's interesting in the CV is the art book. So you go to, this is your book of things that you have achieved so far. Okay, does it look good? Is it the right style? If you're making a comics-based game, then we're looking for a certain type of style, and so making sure like your art, your art collection that you have online or with your name on it, that needs to be up to snuff. And just, this is a really detailed thing. Just delete old stuff that is no longer good enough. Because you will go on there and say, this looks great. Okay, okay. It's just you don't get it's quite brutal.
It will turn you off as a potential employer.
For sure. If you have one bad artwork and you have 5 good ones, that suddenly you have you count as 2 good ones. Just get rid of that
Wow.
one. It has a hugely negative value.
And is it it's interesting because I think it was about a week ago, I was talking with some students, university students, and they were sort of building up a portfolio, and I was wondering if it's better. So there's one in particular I spoke to, and he was saying he had a range of things, and let's assume that you have a range of things and they're all of good industry standard. Is it better to have a range of things or to show a specific aspect of one type of style?
I honestly don't know. So for me, a range of things is good, as long as it's good quality. The problem is obviously if you have the biggest studios might have very, very specific things and only looking for very specific things, and then if some portion of your portfolio hasn't the same level of quality as the other portion of the portfolio in that way, then it might not be worth having it up there. But in big AAA, I'm still amazed by this job posting I saw on, I think it was DICE. They were looking for leaf animators.
Oh, super specific.
or at the E3 some years ago, I met a rock guy from Insomniac, I think. So he had spent 3 years making different rocks for whatever the game he had been. So there is so in large AAA games, you have the specialities are really, really small because you'll have some guy working for 3 years on one explosion, for example, and then what's good about that, and you get to be very good at making that one thing, and so that's the strong part of that. If you're going to smaller studios, they just don't have the manpower to, you will have by nature have to do kind of a broader set of things. It might not be super broad, but still it's going to be in most cases probably broader than when if you're working for a big company. Another thing that's happening right now as well, and I think Corona and that whole thing kind of accelerated that, is game studios are becoming much more place agnostic, in the sense that right now I know a bunch of people that are getting hired for international companies but are still working in France, for example, and really global teams I think it was happening before with in general in video games, but it's really accelerated now with after COVID. So even if you're based in the UK, for example, I think it's nowadays it's perfectly possible that you could find roles in companies that are based completely in different parts of the world. Absolutely.
This is a bit of a weird one. It's back to something you said earlier. It just stuck in my mind. So I've got some game related questions. This is more like a career one, because you said you had a company and you sold your share in it, and then your wife told you that you should go and look at something you're passionate in, which kind of I took that the thing you were doing you weren't passionate in. Is that? Because I'm always
not in the same sense. No. That was a good business opportunity.
Okay.
Right. It was interesting in some sense, right? Because I'm interested in many things.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really a passion in the same sense.
Because Oh no, I was just because the reason why it kind of stuck in my mind, because we're kind of in this space and in this time and place where people are do what makes you happy, do what you're passionate about, and then it's kind of the the practicality of do what you need to do to sort of earn a living.
Yeah.
And I know you explained that in
But
your situation.
This is my situation was so different.
Yeah.
Like not everybody has that. But the other thing I want to say is that not for everyone, but many young people actually have that freedom. Like in the end, what it's going to cost? It's going to cost you a year of your life. But wouldn't it be worth it? Maybe it worked, actually. What if it worked? Like that's what the situation was when I started my first company. And then at that point, sure, I had a good career, I had a good education and so on, and I wasn't, I could always have found another job. But when you're young, this is before you have kids, before you have lots of things that are just immutable, like requirements on you. Try. What's the worst that could happen? Like the worst thing, it didn't work out. So what?
Yeah.
Like that's fine. Yeah. And I think right now in video games, there is so much stuff happening. In some like there's so much money now in video games, and the competition at the same time, the competition is terrific, extremely tough. But there is so much opportunities with all of these things that are happening. So many teams that are being created, other the games that are doing well, other games that are not doing so well, and it gives creates a lot of dynamic in the industry. And you have so many strong tools now, like the game engines, Unity and Unreal. They're like magical tools. Also incredibly complex and hard and so on. But you see. I don't know if you saw the game Valheim, for example. It was made, I think, it was the Vikings, like a survival Viking game. That was made by 4 people. Sold like millions of copies. Now, those 4 people were probably quite good, but like the opportunities are there, and if you happen to have the right game at the right time, there is so much fun stuff to. And if you can afford it, why not try it?
Yeah.
This is it's like you guys starting your brand, starting this channel or whatever. What's the worst thing that can happen? You fail.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be not fun. But it's there's nothing that is so rewarding either to see these like something that you started and something you try to build and see it succeed. Like it's fantastic. Like I actually been working on games now that have been played by like 500,000 people. Like it's crazy.
That is cool.
That's crazy. Even if just a few of them got a little bit happier, imagine what I've helped do. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So anyways, and you get to work with I've worked with so many talented people. Video games is also great from that perspective, in the sense like I feel at least like it is in many ways like the most inclusive community in any industry I've seen, in terms of the width of people, in terms of sure, there's a bunch of nerdy guys in it. Like if you look at from pure like gender equality, video games are not good. Like you have something like 15 to 20% women in there, which I find is a catastrophe. Because almost 50% of the players are women. And so clearly, like the whole industry is losing out because of women are not more women are not part of developers, and they could bring like more of that perspective into it. But other than that,
how many things have come from women early on in the gaming industry?
Oh, I'm sure. Well, in so many areas, like it's just a waste. Well, like if you look at it from a purely like game, like let's pretend I'm a big game executive, it's a wasted opportunity that we don't have more women in there. But in other ways, like in terms of the if you go to video game events, for example, there is almost I saw this statistics. There's almost as many LGBT people in video games as there are women. Well, that's kind of a problem on the women's side, but it means that on the other side, like there's a huge openness to people with different backgrounds, and I think that's amazing. And so in many ways, like video games is very inclusive, and especially if you look at influencers among independent video game developers and so on, like it's a very, very strong. People want people of various backgrounds to do well in video games, and I think that's it's amazing.
Q2Me has another question, and it was, what are your thoughts on Kickstarter as a platform for funding game startups?
I have failed on Kickstarter. I don't know if I said this again, but like in the first game we made, I failed on every single aspect on video game development. One of those was Kickstarter. And so I know quite a lot about Kickstarter, and I think for the right game, it can absolutely work. We know that. But for the wrong game, which was the game that we tried, it doesn't work. So if you have a free-to-play game, for example, Kickstarter is completely worthless. If you have a game that's attractive for people like in their late 30s to 40s, Kickstarter is maybe the platform for you, because if you look at the people that are on there, for the most part, it's slightly older. So like if the average, or like some like if you look at like an average like MOBA player, like a League of Legends player, they might be 20, 25 now or something, because the ages go up. But on the average Kickstarter user is like 40, 42, maybe now it's 45, who knows. And so again, like, who is this game for? If the game is for these people, then Kickstarter is absolutely. So we are working on one concept right now that could be that could really be a good Kickstarter game. The other thing you have to be realistic about is that both as a Kickstarter buyer and the games are incredibly expensive to make if you're paying for people to make them. So if you have a team of 15 to 20 that are working full time for 3 years, that's a lot of money. And in many cases, a Kickstarter campaign will bring, even a successful Kickstarter campaign will bring in a small portion of what the money is really necessary, and what the money is necessary to finish a game. But what it does is that it proves to others, for example, an investor or a publisher or whatever, that people are interested in this. And so it's like a pre-sale almost of the game. That's basically what it is. And so if you have the right game and the right timing, and you can bring it to the, like, a level of quality in the videos that you're going to show, and ideally to like playable, like having a successful Kickstarter is going to bring you so many other good things. And the money of the Kickstarter is one of them. But might be more important the doors that they can open if you can bring it to a publisher, for example.
Cool.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Don't do a free-to-play game
on Kickstarter.
Whatever you do, it's very demoralizing.
Yeah, I've fallen short on a few Kickstarters, so I can imagine. Not the scale of gaming, but still, less than 100%. It still hurts. But I've got one last question for me before we kind of wrap. I'm just curious for yourself as a developer, as an indie developer as well. Now we have this new generation of consoles and game engines to come. Like what that means for you as an indie developer. Like, what does a new generation of consoles, what can it do for future games that you will create?
Question. So, because for the most part, like the new consoles, mostly what they bring is like more graphical processing power.
Yeah.
And for the most part, the most expensive thing to do in video games is to do complex, realistic-looking visuals. And so for a smaller indie game, it is, or for a smaller indie developer, it's not like, that might not be the most exciting thing about it. But what you have at the same time, like you have, as I said, like tools are becoming more stronger and stronger and stronger at the same time. So that means that a smaller team can make stuff that are really cool faster. And And so at the same, to really draw the full, it's not for a really small team. The fact that the consoles have better graphical capabilities is just not gonna help much. But then it's more important actually the quality of the tools and on all the stuff that you can buy. So not only buy, but there's another, if you're a young person that want to start developing your own thing, but the strongest advice I can really get is to either get experience first working for a company, but either if that doesn't help or where you don't find the right opportunity for you, network. Because again, being a successful single developer of a game, I think it's very hard. But if you can find a group of peers, then you can develop together and making your common passion project. I think that will be much easier to kind of develop and be able to find your way in doing something that's that can be really rewarding. Yeah. And so either get experience in a real in a gaming company, or network, or do both. Meet people in the industry and reach out to people and ask for help, because people are nice in video games. You just if you email me and ask for advice, I will try to give you advice. It's very simple. You just have to be on a day when I actually have time to deal with all the emails in mailbox. But if I have those 5 minutes, I will absolutely help people. And I think that happens everywhere. So reach out, ask for help. Have me find somebody else that's a good that does good sound stuff. Do the sound piece with you, and so on and so forth. I think the tools together with the networks that you can find of people, that's the thing that's exciting when you're young and starting out.
That's really good advice. And yeah, because networking, I think some of the best advice I got when I was starting out was to network relentlessly. And I'm realizing now more and more how good advice that was. And I think to add on to your point about the email is particularly for young people, because I've had sort of these conversations of how do I email people that I want to know? And the answer is you just email them, like you just said. Yeah. But then the other thing is don't take a lack of response or lack of response within a day or a week as I hate you. Why did you bother emailing me?
No, I've stopped. I think, I don't know, maybe earlier in my career, there was a possibility that I could actually keep up with all the emails. But I'll be honest. If there's something that is not immediately urgent, you put that aside, and I'll deal with it when I get to it.
And then you forget.
Everybody has this, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you just never get to it, and just try again.
Yeah.
Just wait
if somebody gets pissed off, he's going to tell you. Yeah. But if it just and I'll tell you. So this is how we in France. I'm sure you have that as well. You have these interns that go to I don't know what they 8th grade or 7th grade. I'm not sure exactly how your grades are named. But so in France they have these, and yeah, it works if you email and ask for and if they don't respond to your email, you try to call them repeatedly. That's how the intern that's starting on Monday, that's how he got his internship.
Oh, wow. Okay, there you go.
Oh, he somehow found when I didn't respond to his emails because it wasn't immediately urgent, then he found my phone number somewhere and called me, and he's a nice guy, so why not?
Yeah. Fair enough.
So, definitely.
And there are so many...
There is so many ways to connect to people, right? You've got Twitter, if people are on Instagram, LinkedIn is obviously a great one because that's where people are looking to make those business connections.
So. No, so literally that is, and asking people for help, even there are so many stories. I don't know if you even somebody. It bothers me when you take examples from really successful people, but take Jobs, for example. He called up, I think, the head of Hewlett Packard when he was 13 and asked him if he could do something, get some component that Hewlett Packard was making, and that way he got hired by, like, as a summer internship at Hewlett Packard. He wasn't Steve Jobs then. He was just a 13-year-old boy, like, wanted to do stuff, had to do with Hewlett Packard. Like, even surprisingly senior people just like to be helpful. Like, it's actually a delight to not have to deal with, some personnel problem or some important decision. It's just helping people. It feels good. Like, don't hesitate to make people feel good. Like, reach out, let them feel good by helping you.
That's really good advice. I think everyone should, take that.
Me taking a mental note
I know,
myself.
right?
I'm terrible at asking for help or asking for advice.
We've had this conversation.
It's the same. Like, as I said, like, we've had community members that asked if they could help out, if there was something they could do, and we obviously like them because they like our stuff, and so we try to find ways to help them. And some of them have through that gotten become community managers. Like, we have become community managers, found their different jobs in the industry. I recruit people that have good mentality and that I just see, like, whether they have interest, like, experience or not. For example, women, a lot of women, they just didn't see video games as, like, an alternative, really. And then I run into them. I ran into 2 women like that. I hired them, and they did a fantastic job with us, and they've gone on to do a fantastic job with other video game companies. So, like, it's, there's really a lot of opportunity in the industry.
Yeah, I like that. That's a nice positive place, I think, to end it and give that advice for people to take on. So, so I'd say thank you, Anders, for joining us and giving us, like, the kind of your knowledge and experience and really good advice.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And thank you to everyone who's joining us live, everyone who watch or listen to this at a later date. We do interviews and panels like this about different topics or different people in the industry. So I hope you have enjoyed the discussion. Please do check out our poll for this month, where we are asking if you would prefer AAA games to have an upfront entry fee, like normal, or this free-to-play experience that is becoming more and more popular. I don't know if popular is the right word, but it's becoming more and more anyway. We've got a poll. We're putting that in our chat, and that will go out, and then we'll release the results in next month's GamePad report video. And as Tazziii said early on, we have our summer GamePad online event. Tickets are free and available. It's going to be hosted by Tazziii. We're going to have game streaming with our friendly fire competition. We have a number of interviews that I'll be doing and running as part of the event. And we're going to give away artwork as well. So we're going to start working on that soon. Put that out on social media. High-res artwork going out to our Discord, and then also have a printed version. Only doing one, or maybe 2. Maximum 2, and that will go to ticket.
Maybe 2.
I'm thinking. Depends how generous I feel, but definitely no more than 2. That will go out to ticket holders, so you can check that out. Gamepad.events, and for this month as well, we have our Studio77 Games Night. We're going to be playing Rocket League with other Studio77 members, so you can come and watch us make a mess of that game, as we have done with Fortnite, as we have done with Roblox, and as we will continue to do until we find a game that we are good at. I am good at. Let me not speak for everyone, but that I am good at. So and last thing to mention is that you can check out the Story X Story podcast, which is hosted by myself and my adjacent box, Tazziii. And you can listen to different episodes. We have deep dives into stories across pop culture, creator interviews, and video game discussions. So, in fact, today's episode that will go out is about E3. So, got a good roundtable there. And as always, you can email us as well. Our email is also open. So give us a shout if you have any questions that we can help with or help you network within the industry, mayamada.com, and our website with links to the Discord and information on the next event is gamepad.events. Nice and easy. So that has been our interview. That has been our stream. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time. Hey there, I'm Nigel from mayamada. Thanks for watching our video. Don't forget to subscribe and check out the other great videos we have on the channel. You can also join the Gamepad Discord and check out the next event at gamepad.events. We'll see you soon.